Classic Stage 1 game. It was an 8-7 all the way back on Chalet. Both of the teams developed a ton. They both made it to the SI playoffs. FURIA did get first rounded, but given their history and the fact they came in through close qualifiers, no one really expected them to come in. I would say that was a huge success for them. So now let's have a look at what it is that they are banning. Once again, Flores has made it through into the ban selection. We got Goyo in there, Thatcher as well, and to join in, it's going to be Mirror.
Flores banned out again here. We're certainly seeing our fair share of that ban come on in. I've got a little bit of a sprinkle of the familiar in there as well, though, with that Thatcher ban, that Mirror ban. Flores and Goyo both going. You kind of wonder that those two sort of go hand in hand together. If you've got the Flores, you're going to be able to get rid of the Goyo shields. If you're removing one, do you need to remove the other? But obviously the shield's still difficult to get rid of when it comes to grenades, and it's going to put a bit more pressure on that utility as well. No, what I would call direct target bans here inside of this one, as we don't see the book, for example, removed from Alamalo, though for the time being he is going to be going on the sledge. Maybe having the heads up that FURIA are going to take them downstairs to the kitchen first.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't show me that he's going on sledge. I think sledge is incredibly useful for this site particularly. Even though Buck essentially does the same thing and being able to open up the floors, you want to have those nades available to you to actually throw down into the site, remove utility that'll be down there. And when you're looking at the operators that have been brought defensively, you could be looking for something like mute jammers, for example, because you don't have the EMPs available to you. You'll want to remove those most likely vertically. There's also Kayud Electro Claws. Those you're not really going to necessarily need to remove with a grenade, but you'll still be looking to do it vertically. So either way, if you're going to be playing that vertical play and relying on it a lot, I would say bring the sledge over the Buck purely for the sake of having the grenades available to you, which could be more handy. Maybe we'll get to see some Buck from Alamo a little bit later on. You don't know. This is a nice roam from Fantasy as well. Fantasy is a very aggressive player. He's so pugnacious. He's so happy to take gunfights. Knowing that Team 1 are going to have to come in vertically for their approach into kitchen, he's prepping himself to take on anyone who may decide to come in through this first floor. He knows someone's just outside of this doorway, and so he's walking right up to it, of course, because why else?
I mean, why wouldn't you? Just take the fight head on, hit him in the head, click the head, get the kill. Fantasy, a player that I think, I'm not sure if it was Ace or me or Yu-Gi-Oh that came up with the Brazilian Bolo phrase for him, but it's something that seems to have stuck. Probably was. It seems like a Tim thing to do, I'll be honest with you.
Brazilian Bolo.
The Brazilian Bolo in Fantasy, and I kind of like it. I think it sticks. He certainly has his moments. Think back to a brilliant 4K he was able to get over on Oregon. We'll have to see if he's able to recreate some of those successes here and now today. For the time being, a relatively slow round in terms of action, but for what Team 1 have achieved, they've done exceptionally well. They've been able to take control of that top floor. They're now looking to heavily pressure onto these staircases, try and get themselves into that dining room. Fantasy, he's going to be the first to fall. He was actually stood on top of the hatch and wasn't able to drop. Neskin, he's been able to find a kill over onto Rare as well, as they do seem to come in spurts here. Lender, no C4 in hand. Conscious of a player that could have pushed down brown stairs, but for the time being, that player is just going to be a little bit further above. High's going to be playing on red stairs, so arguably an unnecessarily aggressive defensive stance here from FURIA. As while the vertical control is a problem, it hasn't yet really been opened or exploited by Team 1, yet still they're choosing to play in these off-site locations and trying to, you know, not get caught out in the site. Team 1 for the time being more than happy to take the time to clear everything out, get a couple of kills. Now we're going to see Neskin able to move in and grab a little bit of intel. He's conscious of that mute jammer, unable to get into Gemini down safely. But it has gathered a little bit of intel. A cooked nade here could be beautiful. Going to force Miracle out of place. No one in position to take advantage of that one, as a second nade's going to come in and attempt to finish the task. Freezer hatch drop now with only 14 seconds left. Lagonis does have the diffuser and can look to try and get it down, but it's unlikely to even come to that. Neskin and Alamau, what a huge round from both of those. Neskin, he picks up a 3k. Bit of an attempt to try and gain a few frags back in the end, as a couple of the Team 1 guys did line up there, but ultimately it's a round that goes to Team 1.
One of the big risks that FURIA went with there is, even after they lost those first 2 engagements, Lenda stayed off the site. And it was something that you touched on, Ollie, but the problem is it wasn't so much about whether he was going to be surrounded at that point. The default cam was still up, and you could see it was active. So the rest of Team 1 were watching his back. They were ensuring that he had all the information he needed as to whether anyone was coming down the white stairs or if there was going to be someone on the brown stairs, whatever it may be. The big risk there, however, is that if Team 1 were to have pushed onto the site, he wouldn't have been there. Usually, if you have 2 people get picked off that early, you want to ensure that everybody else is together because you have the best chances of surviving out any kind of gunfight that may ensue. That wasn't something that FURIA decided to do. And I can't say I'm too surprised, because knowing what we know about their playstyle and their aggression, it fits into that. I just think it's a very risky decision. Ironically, it was Lenda who was the last one to survive, but by the time he made it onto the site, everyone else was dead, and he couldn't hold all of those lines of sight on his own. And maybe they would have been able to clamp down on the site a bit better had he been there earlier.
There's potentially some advantage here for Team 1 in that they played yesterday and they had a tough game against W7M. Now, that might have been a good little wake-up call for them, and sure, there's only so much work that you can do in 24 hours, but even just to give them a bit of a jolt mentally and be like, you've still got to be well prepared going into these games. You may have just done really well at an international event, but there are teams in the BR6 that are going to give you a rough time if you're not careful. It may have just given them a bit of a wake-up, because already I'm seeing big differences there in the way that Team 1 approached that round on attack to the way that we saw them approach Oregon yesterday. If that's a trend that does continue, could make this game quite difficult for FURIA, but still very early days. We need to see how FURIA react, and I would imagine they don't play as aggressively in these rounds on the defense from that point onwards.
I mean, Team 1 did admit yesterday in their interview that there were certain things that they'd kind of let slip through when they were playing on Oregon, so I guarantee you that what you're postulating about probably has happened. They probably have had those conversations and neatened up the screws a bit. I mean, they've done 1 round so far, so we've got to wait to see if it continues to happen, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. They did also lean quite a lot into the forest yesterday, which they, of course, don't have available to them in this game because it got banned out straight away by FURIA.
It's almost, you almost wonder if that has benefited them, because there were times yesterday where Alamau was getting really locked up in that Flores, and it takes a lot of time to use those drones. Sure, he's got 4, but that's a long time you're out of your gun and a long time you're out of the game, really.
It's like, stick with what you know.
Yeah.
You know, go back to what feels comfortable. So yeah, maybe that is going to be a huge benefit. In this round so far, no one has died yet, so that kind of really deep roam that FURIA were going for in the last round that led to a lot of deaths, it's still standing for now. We did just get to see Lenda upstairs. Not entirely sure where Fantasy is right now, but Levy is not far away upstairs as well. Okay, Fantasy's right next to Lenda. So they're both going to be moving in through this top floor, and they may find themselves getting caught up with Levy, but the air jabs are going to make it harder for those 2 players from FURIA to rotate down if they don't take these engagements on the top floor straight away.
KDS has a line of sight there in onto Miracle, and Miracle's able to land 1 bullet onto Lagonis. Lagonis getting a little bit aggro on the angle, and he's in fact going to push his way all the way down. He has got the assistance of KDS right next to him, but Miracle! What a great shot over onto Lagonis. Just something to find the opening kill, and it's going to leave the diffuser on the ground. Lenda, you have to push on through that, but no, he's going to get baited out. Alamau, he is there for the kill. 2 fly in the way of FURIA, though. Still only a 3 versus 2, so all the kills that have gone on down, but Rare is going to step up in a pretty monumental way. Alamau, 0 seconds remain. FURIA really did run Team 1 ragged there, able to hold various areas of the map to great success.
Yeah, those roamers upstairs didn't receive anywhere near as much pressure as they did in the previous round. Then you had the really nice kill from Miracle, ensuring that the diffuser went down cold on the red stairs. That's a very difficult place to be able to retrieve the diffuser because of the lines of sight that are open on the wall into the site itself. You're right next to the site there. So that's very much easier for the defenders to keep an eye on than somewhere else on the map, for example. You could tell that, especially because of the time that was ticking, Team 1 just kind of went, we need to take these engagements, we know where these players are, we have to do it, but weren't quite as prepared for them because they were doing it on a jolt. And when you have to take those less coordinated fights, those more desperate fights, it always becomes significantly harder for you. Really nice from FURIA, and I think it certainly helped the discipline that was played on the roam as well was more than it was in the first round, and I want to see if that continues here. If Fantasy and Lender, they continue on with the roam, but not necessarily overstepping their mark when they don't need to.
I think that's the key, isn't it? It's knowing when to temper that roam, knowing when to turn it on, knowing when to back off and leave it. Rare saw some really good success there inside of that round. Fantasy as well, so it was something that worked quite well, but you think back to the kill that Miracle was able to get. If he doesn't get that frag onto Lagonis, it makes the job a lot more difficult, because then Lagonis is able to push on through with KDS and they can start to try and take a little bit more control. So whilst it is a round that FURIA did win, it isn't a round that was entirely out of the question for Team 1. A couple of things going the other way, and you would have been able to come away with that one. Well, a change of round means a change of site, at least because FURIA won. They're going to take us upstairs to Bar and Cocktail. Now, this site has kind of fallen out of favour, honestly, and that's potentially why we're seeing it as a third pick here by FURIA. A lot of teams will take it second, third, or even sometimes not at all.
They're not on reading.
They are in reading, actually. Sorry, I got my little yellow outlines muddled up. Well, that makes even more sense to my point that I was going to make, in that Bar and Cocktail isn't picked all too much. So it's no surprise the downstairs in reading Geo.
Nice save. I like it. It does mean that there's still got to be some defensive presence up on the top floor, however, and we did just see that. It's going to be a lot more important and poignant as to whether or not the attackers can take control of Cocktail. We have a defender present on Pixel, that's Fantasy right here. We have highs over in Cocktail, guarded by the Surya gates as well. That means Team 1 will probably have to invest a projectile, most likely, to actually get through there. Lots of projectiles in the forms of flashes being thrown over to burn out the Wamai discs that we could hear. And that's going to send Fantasy just moving back slightly for his safety.
I think he still has the shield there on Pixel, but there is a question as to how long you really want to try and hold that position for. Drone's going to be coming in now for Miracle, as he's playing in a very similar spot as what we saw him play previously. This time KDS is a bit further down. He's made his way down the stairs, and he's almost at a point of challenging onto the door. He got a glimpse at the crossing player there between Dining and Reading. The crossing player being Miracle. A little bit of aggression being shown here by Miracle. It's a long-range engagement to be taken with the SMG. Players from FURIA are now able to make that rotation down, because top floor control has arguably not really been gained here by Team 1. It means that all those players can now start to move on through. We do hear an air jab in the distance as one of the players does get caught on out for a brief second, but it isn't going to do all too much. Lender is going to be huge here. With the wall being open now into Fireplace, it indicates that that's where Team 1 wants to try and get a plant off. Lender's playing on White Stairs. Fantasy's above him on Lumber, trying to keep him secure and safe as well. There is a presence over inside of Reading, and everything that Team 1 are trying to do at the moment, they are coming up against quite a large obstacle. Still, power positions being held, lines of sight. Alamal's going to find the first, but Lender from those White Stairs is going to be massive. Takes down KDS as well. Levy and Alamal are trying as they might, but once again, they're going to fall the victim of the 6-man. They're going to fall the victim to time. FURIA, a great defense there of Reading.
I think one of the things that really worked in their favor was the fact that Team 1 on their attack, rather than trying to tackle the issue head-on, they tried to go a way that would bypass a lot of the defensive prowess that had been set up on the top floor. So instead of going for a full Cocktail take and then pushing down the White Stairs, they came in through mining, opened up the Fireplace wall, and wanted to push in through that way. Well, FURIA had plenty of time and space to actually be able to change around for that and set up for it. They had the reading wall electrified, so the X-Kairos pellets wouldn't work on there. That basically meant that Team 1 had only one route of ingress that they could go for. They weren't going to be able to make it in through the reading wall. They hadn't put their attention over to Cocktail, so it's not like you can suddenly change your mind and go for that. And FURIA were relatively safe. I mean, obviously a couple of their players had died, but they still had the room to move around and rotate because they knew where Team 1 were coming in from. I do wonder if Team 1 had decided to commit to the Cocktail take, maybe it would have gone differently, but it's so easy to turn and say, oh, well, if they'd done this, if they'd done this. The fact is they didn't, and the route that they did go in for, while it was kind of sneaky to try and bypass all of that defensive setup, it just didn't work for them.
I'll be honest, you seldom see that push work for the attackers.
Yeah.
Regularly, it relies on them getting a couple of really big kills that go untraded, getting a big advantage, and then being able to hold the flanks as defenders try and rotate back through. But Lender on those white stairs was just such a pain. If anyone was even on the ventilation unit outside of East Rappel, there's the small ventilation unit that you can actually look into white stairs with. You can just hop on up, you can get on East Rappel. A number of things that you can do to try and deal with him for, you know, very free, very low cost. And it's, in some cases, you're not even going to get yourself into a gunfight. You're just going to provide enough pressure so he can't play there. It wasn't something that we saw Team 1 doing. 2 rounds in a row now, we've seen them, and if they'd have had another 20 or 30 seconds, we could have been seeing them come away with rounds, but they don't, and they're really running out of that time. You do wonder if they are just getting wrapped up in, you know, that sort of mid-round time sink.
Yep. And Team 1 are going to have to do some work to ensure that doesn't keep happening, because now they are behind. And FURIA are going to their 4th site. They have decided to go to Bar, which you said fallen out of favor, so it was picked last. It was the least favorite child. And I suspect it's because FURIA know that Team 1 won Kitchen, so they might as well try and go to a site that maybe Team 1 are going to lose once again. And again, Fantasy set himself up in Washroom. He has the Surya Gate for protection on the Pixel door, but also has the line of sight through into Piano. So the likelihood is he's going to have to be cleared out or just straight up shot in the face if Team 1 are going to take the space in Piano to actually move in.
Ooh, rare. You don't know that someone's just outside on the rappel. Alamo. I bet he wishes he wasn't on that rappel right now. He could have swung and easily found himself that kill, but instead, he's stuck. Like an insect gripping onto a wall for dear life. Gonna move on up and say, you know what, we will let the player be downstairs in reading. I'm gonna make my way all the way on into Cocktail. Finds himself one, tries to pre-fire on through, but will be shut down by Highs. Arguably at this point, not worth it, as Highs can start to go huge. Fantasy, he's gonna find one in and amongst the fray. Does leave us in a 3 versus 2, but the diffuser is going to be surrendered. Pretty much in the middle of Cocktail, Highs, and the Alder. All that combination is enough to put him onto a triple. Can he find the quad? No, not quite. Levy, he's going to pick up 2. No, he's going to pick up 1 before getting traded on out. Then it looked as though he was going to grab the second one as well, but that final frag will come in. FURIA starting to get a couple of rounds under their belt here, get a little bit more confidence. And the worries of round 1 seem a long time ago.
I think one of the things that really demonstrates how dire things were at the end of there after the diffuser had been dropped is when you think about where the default plant sites are on Bar and Cocktail. They're either behind the little mini bar or they're over by the wall that goes into Piano. None of them are over on the other side of the room. And you might think, why is that relevant? Because that's where the diffuser was dropped. The whole point is you don't really need to walk all that far into the room. It's very dangerous, especially if you have someone in backstore, which you should really get rid of them. You should clear out Freezer, kids. Or if you have someone over on Maestro spot, which is where we saw the Maestro being played in Cocktail. So to try and retrieve that diffuser that had been dropped is so difficult. That's why you don't plant in the lines of sight that you would have to cross in order to get it. And it was at that point that you know, as Team 1, there's no way they're going to do this. They have to play for kills, which they did admittedly very nearly get. But the point is once the diffuser is down, you know your options are limited. You can't try to go in for a sneaky plant like many teams try to do even before all the defenders are dead or most of the defenders are dead. You don't have that as a choice. So that was not great for Team One, because at that point you kind of know what your fate could be. And maybe even more frustrating knowing that they did nearly get the final 1v1.
Tough stuff from Team One, and it kind of shows like a bit of a desperate times, desperate measures mentality, and you worry about the confidence levels of FURIA now. You see windows prepped, ready to be flown out of, as Lender on the Valkyrie is likely going to have information as to what is going on this east side. A couple of players for Team One are going to be occupying the space. Alamau takes a bit of damage before dropping on in. Not sure how that came to be, but he'll be fitting well enough to take on a couple more engagements. Oh, there's the run out. Lender, he's able to find himself one, but didn't know about Lagonis. Still, a 1-for-1 trade. It removes the nades, and it removes a lot of information on the side of Team One.
This is the one site that FURIA have not successfully been able to defend, and a lot of that was down to their incredibly heavy and aggressive roam. It doesn't look like that's so much the case here. A lot of those orange silhouettes are downstairs, and only one player has been removed off of FURIA, and he got one anyway, before then, or in return. Whichever got it first. The point is he got a kill for his death. So it's not looking like it did in round number 1 in the situation that led to their loss overall. Team 1 is still taking the time to open up the relevant holes. It's a nice C4, but it doesn't quite find what it was looking for. Almau trying to play it cautious, though, on the hard floor after opening some up.
Miracle seemingly with a lot of angles to try and worry about here as floor continues to get open. Fancy going to be in a nice position in and around Christmas as he's able to keep an eye on what goes on in terms of a freezer hatch drop. That wall not entirely reinforced, and a nice line of sight. It's at least going to provide the ability to get some chip damage in. Rare can hear the air jab there, but it seems to be easy enough to circumvent, and he sneaks all the way around. Maybe just wants to give it a minute before continuing to pressure. Levy, he's got some good ears on him as he has heard that shot go off. He knows the utility has been taken down, and despite a kill coming in, Rare will be downed. KDS, he's missed Fantasy inside of Christmas. Oh, unfortunate stuff. Fantasy picks up 2 there. A C4 kill flew on in as well. FURIA rectified their mistakes earlier and played much more passively there on the defense, and it did them the world of good. They were able to get another round win.
It was a very interesting decision from my perspective that Team 1 sent someone flying down the freezer hatch at the very end, but a lot of the rest of their players were still upstairs. I mean, those last 3 kills mostly came, or not the very last 3, but those 3 kills that came in together were predominantly all elsewhere. So was it that they were trying to convince FURIA that they were all off-site still and taking kills elsewhere? Because that seems a little far-fetched, if I'm totally honest. So it basically just says they were sending one guy in on his own. And KDS did try to clear Fantasy out from VIP. Usually if you're going to go for a freezer push, part of the checklist is that you clear VIP first. That's one of the first things that you do. That's why a lot of people will open up the garage door. You apply pressure to VIP from there. In the past, it's involved, you know, bringing down a shield, for example, that may be protecting the player in there. But that's not how Team 1 have been approaching it. But to have sent the guy in on his own while everyone else is elsewhere in 1 versus 1s, I don't understand that.
You gotta win your ones, bro.
Yeah.
That is win your ones at the utter extreme. And it isn't reliable, especially against a team like FURIA, who have already proved themselves today to be very capable of not only winning the ones, but sometimes winning their 2s, as they've been able to get a couple of multi-kills, a couple of trades going off as well, and just ultimately coming out the better in a lot of these gunfights. I agree. I think that the focus has been a little bit off, really, from Team 1. There is still time in this round for them to try and rectify that, though. And a 2-4 split for them wouldn't be horrendous. Whilst, yes, it wouldn't be ideal. Cafe isn't the easiest map to attack onto, so there's still chance for them to come away with something that they can then look to start to work with a little bit more ease when it gets onto the defense, as opposed to giving themselves a bit too much of a mountain to climb. They're going to be attacking onto Reading here. This is a site where they did struggle to clear that top floor. They were able to root the players out, but they weren't able to get any kills or any really significant power positions. More importantly, they ran out of time.
Yeah, they tried to come in through mining side last time. It looks like maybe they're going to try and apply some more pressure onto the top floor, given that Fantasy just immediately got brought down. And I would assume that because Highs is still on the Aruni, they have set Cocktail up to have Aruni gates as well. So it could be a very similar defensive strategy to what there was before. And I want to believe that Team One are basically looking at this and saying, right, we need to change what happened. Yeah, there you go. Highs is up in Cocktail. There are the FURIA gates. I don't want Team One to be making the same fireplace push. They are making their way across the top floor, and I think with the demise of Fantasy, it makes that a much easier prospect anyway.
It does, and it puts a lot of pressure on Lender in this position as well. Lender playing on those white stairs, or at least trying to, and this time you can see that he is going to be getting pressured there in that regard. We've got KDS at the top of Lumber. Already all of that is enough to push him down another level. Highs is kind of with him, maybe going to look to try and make a rotation up brown stairs. That would make the most sense at this point to get themselves back to the site nice and quickly. But still, out of position nonetheless. KDS, how do you know that Rare is going to be there? Beautiful pre-fire on through into Dining. Levy going to secure that frag. Ooh, KDS. Lender, you can't be doing that to him, I'm afraid. KDS is holding that angle, and Lender's just going to offer himself up like a sacrifice. 5 versus 2. There might be 20 seconds left, but still it's looking a lot better here for Team 1. Still got a couple of kills to find. Make it just one, as KDS is now on for a quad. Eyes comes in, picks up one of his own. Lagonis, recognizing time short, doesn't want to give up this opportunity of a round, and will look to try and confirm the plant. That then goes down. Highs. He's picked up 2. Still a long way to go. Unfortunately for him, we'll get cut down by Neskin. Always too much information on your whereabouts when you are in that 1vx and you've already picked up a few kills. It's very difficult to then start to chain that together and really get anything going. So a good split there for FURIA. Team 1 did a lot to bring that final round in. I guess we find out now, Gio, if it's going to be enough.
I seriously appreciate the fact that they did change the way that they approached the attack. And I think there were certainly mistakes on the side of FURIA. I mean, Lender pushing up the white stairs when he didn't need to. Straight into KDS's barrel. No, you don't need to do that because you know he's going to be there and he has to come down the stairs at some point. You might as well let him come to you. But for the most part, it was the good side of Team 1 as opposed to the bad side of FURIA that allowed that round to go the way that it did. Getting rid of Fantasy, great, they've opened up a lot of space. Moving across the top floor, actually taking their time to do that, rather than trying to come in and circumvent that entire defense, that was the right way to do it. It gave them control of the white stairs, it gave them control of Cocktail, it gave them control of all the spaces that you would traditionally need in order to have a successful attack onto Reading. Guess what? It worked. So that's certainly nice to see, and I know that now the sides have switched. You can't directly adapt to what you've just played on the first 6 rounds. But if Team 1 do lose any of these upcoming rounds, it makes me have some faith that they'll be able to adapt in a way that could potentially see a comeback.
A comeback is on the cards here for Team 1. A 4-2 split on the defense isn't that unusual here on Cafe. And especially with the way that Team 1 played yesterday, they're really going to want to try and get a handle on how things are going and see if they can start to change their fortunes. They're already going to be starting things off in a massive way. You can't pick who you get in a spawn peak. It really is just luck of the draw. They've been able to take down Rare, and that is going to be the resident hard breach for FURIA. Barnett no longer in the picture. Okay, it's not going to be the biggest loss, but it's certainly going to make things like taking control of Piano a lot more difficult. Rooting anybody out of washroom a lot more difficult. There's ways and means you can get around this, but losing the hard breacher, not ideal.
Yep, it means if they want to come in through piano, they're pretty much going to have to use the windows or directly face check in through cigar. They can't open up the reinforced walls over onto cocktail to pressure the defenders in there. And as you said, freezer, washroom, that kind of area, if there's anybody in there who needs to be excavated, so much harder if you don't have a hard breach available to do that. So they're going to have to go a different way and kind of compromise on their attempt. The washroom wall is soft, but that's not going to stop people from being able to hide out in the freezer. Ooh, High's narrowly missing out. Actually, Levy decided he was going to turn around. So I guess High's didn't miss out on the killer tool. That was not the play.
No, not really it there from Levy, but it does something for Furia and it levels things up once again. You wonder if it's going to be enough. Deployable shields getting destroyed as well. Eyes. Feels like he's potentially getting spotted there as he's trying to search out for Black Eye camera. There's a myriad of places that it could be hidden here on this top floor. Alamau got the smoke canisters in hand, able to start denying that access. Arguably going for it a little bit earlier, but there are C4s as well available on the side of Team 1 that they can use to try and do that job. Fancy currently inside a washroom. There is going to be a player at the top of Lumber. That somebody is going to be Alamau, and he's just going to take that as an aggressive swing. Slowly but surely creeps his way on through. Takes down Fantasy. Another nail in the coffin for Furia at this moment in time. Miracle now has to try and make his way up these white stairs. That barbed wire is not going to be your friend. ADS, we already know what he's capable of, especially on these tight angles. Is he going to give himself away? Oh, almost. Miracle does get a brief chance, but conscious of time at this moment, and, well, at a 3-2, still the chance to make something happen. Miracle aggresses on through and eventually will be taken down by Alamau. Lender repelling in at 3 seconds, not something that you really want to be seeing. Lagonis decides he's going to pop up and find that final kill. Team 1 finding some success here.
Yeah, honestly, Furia's attack was kind of doomed from that first pick. It seems like a really small thing to be putting down the entire fate of a round to, but really, what are your options? If you don't have any hard breach, you haven't even begun your attack, you have to try and come in through some really strange routes. And even if you do go for the regular routes in, you're so limited. If you can't open lines of sight for yourself, if you can't pressure defenders out of their position, if you have to move through choke points, it makes you so much more vulnerable, and Team 1 capitalized on that. So, at the very least, I think if you want to take a positive leaf out of this book, it's not like you can rely on always getting a first pick onto the hard breacher, so I don't think it's a problem fundamental with Furia's playstyle that's going to cause them issues throughout the rest of their attacking rounds. So I wouldn't worry too much about it if I were them. It's just, I think that's where a lot of it came from.
Yeah, for sure. It's just one of those rounds. And then from that point onwards, you have to take the decisions that the players make, knowing that they haven't got a hard breach, almost with a pinch of salt, and be like, you know what, would this really be the plan if there was a hard breach here? I doubt it, because they've had to fundamentally change the way that they're going to approach the site. Fortunately for Furia, they're in a position where they can afford to lose a round. They can't really afford to lose more than a couple, as they do still need to come away with 3 rounds here. An equal split on the half would be nice. You worry about this aggression though, Levy. He has a chance again here. He knows that someone's going to be there. Can he hit the shot? Yes, he can. 2 for 2 for Levy. He takes down Miracle this time. That's going to be the flank watch gone. I mean, it starts to become a little bit of a problem when it's round after round, Gio.
Yeah, that's so disgusting. And, you know, you've got a Vigil and a Jaeger out on the board, so you've got players who would be affected by a flank watch. Well, they have all the map very happily to themselves now if they don't have to worry about air jabs that are going to hold them back. Not quite as disruptive, fundamentally, as losing your only hard breach, but still a big problem when you want to be having a successful roam clear and having successful control of the rest of the map and ensuring that you're not going to get flanked. It means that Furia have to be even more thorough in that attempt. If they don't remove the roamers, they're always in danger.
And again, just something as simple as losing that player. You're going to lose out on the drones that they bring and the ability to try and find those players out. Fantasy, I'm going to slow him down. He finds a frag over onto Alamowers. KDS is going to retreat, deciding instead not to take the engagement, recognizing that the site is all the way down on the first floor and you really don't want to be messing around with controlling the top or getting that roam off when already half of the round has been burnt. Now we can see FURIA start to turn their attention towards this kitchen. Blender can start to open up some of the floor inside a wheel room. See if there are any angles to be found. Certainly some utility to be removed. Still, nobody really in a position to do anything about it. They've still not taken bakery.
It looks like that's going to be the next on their list. Jumping down from upstairs. But, ooh, okay. Wow,
right.
I was going to say, they're just going to burst in. Do they even know that Levy's there? The answer was yes. A great shot from Fantasy ensures that bakery is taken rather swiftly, Ollie. Now, with 30 seconds remaining, they can get to work. They only have to deal with 3 more players of Team 1, and I think they're all around and about the site. KDS isn't exactly on the site. He's actually looking to make a flank. They need someone to watch out on Small Bake, and look, that long line of sight can actually be held all the way through the breach they've just made.
Could be an unfortunate one here for FURIA, as on paper it looks like they should be able to do this, but the Toxic Babe gas is going to be a big problem. Fantasy, nothing is standing in his way, and that is why we call him what we do. Eventually, he is going to be shut on down, but the final frag comes in from Highs. A quad kill there from Fantasy. He was saying, look guys, you might be able to get a spawn peak or 2, but if it's not onto me, we're still going to win the round.
One of, if not the youngest player in all of the BR6. He only turned 18 in March. And yet he's an absolute beast.
Gunner.
Just watch in about 4 years. That's when he'll be on Hard Breach. He's got a couple of years. He's got a couple of years in him until then. Yeah, he really won the round for them there. Because there were a number of situations, especially that one with Levy, where I was like, nah, you're gonna die, mate. You're gonna die. And he didn't.
It's just the confidence. I think every kill that he got, we got to see the other point of view from it, pretty much. And it was just really, it was almost better to see this like blur just sort of swinging across the screen.
Yeah.
A couple of shots get fired and it's like bang into the death animation and like you're on to the next sort of player that we're observing.
Just sprung forth from behind a door frame and suddenly your brains are on the wall. That is how it felt. That is really how it felt. And he's, he's been doing pretty good. Come in on the IQ for this next round, where Team 1 will be heading to Reading and Fireplace. Now, again, this was the round, the site that Team 1 had to make their adaptations when they were attacking onto it. I'm interested to see how FURIA are going to approach that themselves. I would imagine that they're probably just going to go for the full clear on the top. Judging by the way that FURIA are playing, I don't think they're afraid to take any of these engagements. Not that I think Team 1 were necessarily afraid, but they I think they saw this idea where maybe they could avoid them and saw them as unnecessary and then found out the hard way that that's simply not an option. And FURIA preparing to come in through the hatches on the roof suggests to me that they are going to go for that standard clear of the top floor kind of method.
And it's a method that's tried and true. Sure, it does take a little bit of time, but you are guaranteed then in that you're either going to win that top floor and you're going to get the kills and you're going to get the sort of the map control and be able to work on from there, or you're not going to, and you're going to, lose out to those roamers. You're going to get taken down on your entry. But it's better to go that route than to be constantly worrying about where the next defender is going to spring from if these players aren't dealt with. Especially when you look into somebody like Neskin in the position that he's going to be playing in and occupying. He's got a lot of flexibility there. Also got impacts in case he does need to open up a couple of lines of sight or maybe get himself out of position super quick. You can see the wall being pinged open as well, as Kairos pellets are going to be shot off from below. Neskin choosing to aggress on up. Got himself caught in a pretty dodgy situation. You could see the sort of muscle memory there was to go for the C4, but of course he does have impacts here. He's going to be able to keep himself alive for a little bit longer. The wall eventually will be opened. One of his black eye cameras taken out in freezer, so he knows where players are, but he hasn't got any current information. Probably wishing he had a C4, as Neskin, he's going to take down Lender and then be able to drop on off.
You see Lender flicking through his teammates, seeing who he can provide the information to on our new UI. You can see how that's going. Fantasy's going to spring round from the washroom as he hears the cue of the Toxic Babe canister down the corridor, but he can't see anybody. Alamau nice and prone and safe here on the white stairs, but he is lacking for health quite a bit, and he's going to be aggressed upon. But actually, Fantasy goes down to KDS. He's that key player that we looked for in the last round, no longer a part of it. Miracle and Highs adding onto it, however, puts in 3 versus 3.
Not a great deal of time left. KDS going to look to try and make the drop, gets himself into train. Alamau on brown stairs. He has a ping, he has some information, but he's just going to be a fraction of a second too late. The diffuser is in the hands of Rare, and for the time being, it's still a 2 versus 2, but as soon as he goes to try and plant that, it is going to leave him in a little bit of a tough spot. But he says hell to that. I'm going to jump on through, get the plant down, and all of a sudden, Alamau is the one that is in the 1 versus X. Now, has he got the intel? He knows that there's going to be a player moving on through, threads the eye of a needle, and picks that kill over up onto Rare. Can he grab the second? Yes, he can!
Oh
he just goes for the instant turn and burn. Bit of information, bit of a lucky pre-fire, whatever it was beautiful to watch. Alamau, plenty of time to disable that diffuser. What a great clutch from him.
Match point denied to Furia straight up. Team 1 proving that they deserve to stay in this series so far, and we will move into Rodada 10. No closer to a Furia victory just yet, and Team 1 edging their way closer to evening things out. They're still going to have to get there first, however, and that means we need repeats of what we just saw. So Alamau, get your head in the game. You've got to repeat. Got to repeat. Bar will be the next site that they go to. This was the same as back on round number 7, which Team 1 did win. However, if you remember correctly, a lot of that we put down to the really early pick onto Hibana. Basically, Furia had no way of enacting any kind of hard breach, which is so important when you're looking to attack onto nearly any site in the game. Maybe take Coastline out of the equation in that one. Not Clubhouse, which I nearly said. You really want more than one hard breach for that. And again, that's not something that they can rely upon all the time. That's not to say it can't happen, but it's just not... It's not a fundamental playstyle thing. It was like, oh, good pick.
Furia have started 2 of the rounds that they've been attacking so far at a 4 versus 5 due to getting picked. And it has been something that has been a little bit of a problem. Now, whether that's going to be something that's a consistent attempt from Team 1 to get that entry and to be aggressive and to be vying for that kill in the early part of the round, or whether it's just something that they're going to do as and when, appearingly at random, and just give Furia a little bit more of something to worry about as they enter on in, because you can already see that it is causing everybody on the side of Furia to be a bit more conscious of their approach. And it might only seem like a couple of seconds, but it really does start to add up.
Certainly can do. But given that Rare has made it this far, I would go as far as to suggest that it's likely they'll get at least one wall partially open. You know, if you're looking to push in through the red hatch at least, the first thing you're probably looking to do is open up the top red wall. So KDS is kind of looking over towards that angle. Here you go. This is the wall I'm talking about, but not all of those pellets are actually going to be able to be detonated, as some of them are being stopped by a mute jammer, it would appear. They're going to have to get that wall open somehow, though. And so the mute jammer will likely be shot out just from a rappel on one of the windows. And then that should allow them to get on with the job at hand.
There's some really nasty mute jammer placements that you can get there as well that cause quite a great deal of headache for the attackers. Seems like for the time being it's still going to be an issue, and I mean, even then the pellets haven't really been deployed close enough together to get a nice clean opening. Isaac is going to be able to destroy the shield onto Pixel, and it looks as though FURIA are just going to accept their losses with getting that wall open. It isn't a requirement by any means. It just gives a nicer line of sight to move on through into Cigar and Piano, but without it, it is not going to be the end of the world. They've already been able to shift the player off Pixel, and they can now look toward pressuring on through a bit further.
Fantasy, again, has made his way into Warstream, but we've seen him be punished for this position in the past. So that's another one that he wants to be looking out for. And you can hear more Hibana pellets. That's onto the backstore wall. So again, this is another key piece of pressure that needs to be applied. Now, I'm pretty sure KDS nearly saw Fantasy. They narrowly missed each other when peeking round their respective corners. Alamau's sending in a Toxic Babe canister to try and hold back the push because they know that FURIA have all they need at this point, plus a kill to give them the advantage.
Fancy going to make his way through into Washroom. It's a nice rotation that he's able to gain. Let's just give him a slightly different line of attack, and well, it is going to work out for him. Alamau going to get caught out, but no, he finds himself two. They line up beautifully for him. 2 kills with the SMG. He's keeping himself alive, bobbing and weaving. The plant does go down. Alamau, how hard can you clutch this? He's found himself a third. He's got live information. He finds himself the fourth. Has he got live information on where Miracle is? Yes, he does. Can he land the shot? That's the most important question at this point. Draws for the shotgun, arguably thirsting after the kill. Neskin gets caught out in the air jump. Alamau goes down, but Neskin eventually cleans up, picking up the pieces in what was quite a scrappy round. What an attempt from Alamau. Nearly got himself the ace, but he's going to be happy enough with the round as Team 1 level things up here.
Team 1 putting FURIA really on the edge. And Alamau, I mean, he got handed a number of those kills. High is walking straight in front of him. What was that? That was absolutely nuts. And he just swept up with his victims, leading Team 1 further. And I did say back in round number 9, I was like, hey, Alamau, you've just got to continue doing that. I guess he heard me.
He must have heard.
Yeah, I don't know. So great. We said that this game was probably going to be close, Ollie.
I'm going to have some replays of this little flurry that Alamau was able to go on. You can see that he did get handed a couple, but, and this is the challenge that I would put to you, Gio. If we could somehow recreate that situation, we put you in Alamau's shoes, and or me for that matter, or anybody for that matter,
kill.
And just see how many we would have actually gotten. Because sure, it's all right, they're stacking up, but that's the SMG-11. There's what, 17 bullets in the clip. It ain't a lot to be doing anything with.
The SMG-11 is really one of those weapons that it demands so much respect just throughout everyone who plays Rainbow Six Siege is familiar with the game, because people know how hard it is to play it well. That's why you get your SMG-11 specialists on a number of teams, because it has the highest DPS of any weapon in the entire game, but controlling it and being disciplined enough to not waste all of the magazine and things like that, that's difficult. And so when you see these really great plays, these multi-kills be pulled off with the SMG-11, you know it's in the hands of someone who really knows what they're doing.
Let's see if FURIA have still got it in them to grab a couple of rounds. They have suffered defeat in their last 2 rounds, ultimately to the hands of Alamau and his ability to clutch out when the going gets tough. He's had 6 kills in the last 2 rounds, so he's really skyrocketing himself up there in terms of kills in this game. Now, FURIA need to try and mentally get around that block and just be like, look, we've got to try and approach this as we would any other. This is the round that guarantees one of these teams match point. We're going to be attacking onto the kitchen.
I'm glad you said that because I hadn't written it down yet. And I, like you, am very bad at seeing where the silhouettes are. Especially
when it's kitchen, you know, because there's nothing. it's one of those like, where it isn't really there.
Yeah. No, I totally get you. I feel the same way. FURIA, they've made very quick work over on the top floor, pretty satisfied that nobody is up there to impede them. It could be the next floor down where they start to find some problems, but it actually looks like most of the bodies, if not all of them from Team 1, are on the very bottom floor. They're just spread out across the course of the floor to make basically a push from any direction difficult. Yeah, you know what? I don't think any of them are above the bottom floor.
I mean, Alamar's maybe just said, look, guys, don't leave me in the clutch. Like, it doesn't have to always be like this. Let's just play. Let's just all stack downstairs on this bottom floor and just really start to try and get something going. Because those rounds have been, you know, not 50-50, but that's kind of the way you describe a round that could go either way. Obviously, it was weighted Alamar when he comes out in such a massive fashion and starts to be able to pick up all of the kills, but they're not guaranteed rounds by any stretch for Team 1. The only problem with giving up all this control, especially for Kitchen, is that you do leave yourself fairly susceptible to getting rooted out by that vertical. And if that vertical comes through and that pressure happens, it can be very difficult to try and be on in the site. 25 seconds is all that remains here. And still FURIA yet to find any sort of opener. Miracle's been holding on to Brownstairs basically for the entirety of the round. There are a couple of players that are preoccupied with White. He finds a big opener that now is going to allow Highs to push on through. It forces KDS to make his way outside of Christmas. And through that, one player at least is allowed on through, but he'll be dealt with by Neskin. Rare is going to be getting the plant down. Fantasy finds that final kill, but Team 1, they are going to come up with the round down to the lack of time. And that is going to put them onto a match point.
I'm going to repeat something that I said earlier, Ollie, but please can teams start pressuring VIP earlier? It's such a traditional way to play this site. Well, at least in the last year, I would say that's the normal way to do it, is you pressure VIP really early. Get rid of the shield, get rid of the player in VIP, take control of it. Then you can use White Stairs to your advantage. You have that space. You can come in through, you can either open up the freezer wall or you can make the drop. But what these teams have both done when on attack is left the VIP push until really late. And in that round that we just saw, KDS, who was in VIP, got nearly 3 kills for it. And they didn't even try to get rid of the shield that he was hiding behind. He just had that space to himself. You can't leave that as an afterthought, in my opinion. If you want to be coming in from freezer as opposed to bakery, VIP cannot be an afterthought.
I would agree. Earlier pressure inside of VIP would have been much better, and it would only have taken a couple more kills to come through for that plant to successfully go down. And, you know, I say a couple, probably just one in on the site. And as soon as you are able to remove KDS from that position, it's going to do a lot more. And FURIA had a good idea of how they wanted to get that done. You know, we saw the important kill coming in onto Alamau, who was essentially protecting KDS in that area. But it was all happening with, like, 15 seconds left. It is not enough time to successfully execute. And that seems to be a common theme for both of these teams. Both teams losing out attacking rounds based on the clock. It is by no means something that is exclusive to FURIA. Team 1 had their fair share of it as well when they were on the attack. But they're not going to be worried about that right now, as they are on the match point, looking to try and convert this in what has been quite a tough week, really, for Team 1.
It has been. They have not found any easy games so far. Obviously, we don't know if this one's going to be a victory or not. It may well be. Obviously, they would have to win this round, and they've been doing pretty well on their defense so far, having only let go of 1 round. But none of them have been stomped. None of them have been really easy games. And you look back at the game that these two teams played against each other in the SI groups, that was a 7-3 victory to FURIA on Consulate. Now, part of it might be because that's a much scrappier map. It's a lot more aggressive. You don't have to be as methodical and think as much as you do here on Cafe Dostoyevsky. But the point still stands is that the last time these two teams met, Team 1 looked a lot stronger.
Obviously, work being done in the off-season from both of these sides. And, I mean, I say off-season, they haven't really had much of an off-season to speak of. Both teams were representing themselves at Six Invitational, but still able to take a bit of time in between then and now to adapt and figure out what they were doing, learn from some of the other teams on a global level. Highs this time going to be finding our opening kill over onto Neskin. Seems a bit of a theme that Valkyries are getting taken out first here inside of this game, as it happens more regularly than not. But Neskin still now allowed to jump into his cameras, and you can see that they're going to be the cameras he is occupying. Pressure now going to be applied on this lumber area as Fantasy is looking to push his way on up. Highs is already inside a bar, but Alamau still in cocktail. He's going to be able to get the kill and drop out of there. Fantasy entirely missing the memo as to what has just happened. And whilst, yes, top floor has been gained, it has come at quite the cost. Losing the Zafir there. It's going to make things relatively difficult when they try and push on through, especially if they're going to look to remove any Banshees or shield or anything of that sort of nature. Alamau gets caught out there on the air jab and is sent flying. Miracle, he's able to find a kill over onto KDS. Alamau now inside a train. Could find himself an important kill here before he departs. 1 health. It might not matter. He's still got the SMG-11 and he can still pop your head, Miracle. That could be a huge frag here. It does something, give an advantage to Team 1 here. Rare trying to find some safety to get that plant down. Levy pushing on through. He's going to be allowed to get the kill as well. The refrag comes in, but time again being the problem. Team 1, they are going to take Cafe 7-5.
This certainly seemed to be the game of the defenses, right? Because Furia looked dominant on the first half, taking 4 out of the 6 rounds, but then Team 1 respond in kind, and they take 5 out of the remaining. So, really, we just saw a lot of great defense.